Biddy Mason was a remarkable woman. She was born in Louisiana, Mississippi, in the early 1800s. She was a slave, and she walked 2,000 miles behind her master's wagon to get to California. Her master, whose name was White, was converted to Mormonism. I think there were some missionaries traveling through Mississippi, Louisiana, and he took his children, his wife, and and slaves. I think there were about 9 of them at that time. All traveled to Salt Lake City, what would be Salt Lake City today, in 1847, and became quite active in the Mormon faith there. And Biddy Mason felt very uncomfortable there because Mormonism, at least at that time, thought blacks were evil, and they were painted evil because they were black. And they went then they were there for several years, then they went to San Bernardino, where they had a mission or a community or something. They were there for quite some time. And then she became acquainted with other blacks who were free, and it was a peculiar thing with the California Constitution. If you had come here on your own, in other words, if nobody claimed you, you could be a free person in California, but it was a kind of a catch-22. Anyway, she became acquainted with some blacks who were knowledgeable about the California law, and they helped her to go to Los Angeles. And at the time, her master took the whole group. They were hiding out in the hills in Hollywood, waiting for transportation out of California. Wanted to go to Texas, I think. And it was while they were there that her friend, her black advocate, I guess got in touch with the sheriff and told the sheriff what was going on. So the sheriff arrived and to where they were all camped out, Biddy and the others, and the white master and his family. And he took her and the others her 2 daughters, into protective custody. So she found herself in jail in Los Angeles. And then when they went to court, I think her lawyer, I think her lawyer was bribed by someone to not represent her in court. And as I say, she couldn't testify for herself. But somehow, through prayer and just her inner strength, she was able to talk to the judge, Benjamin Hayes, who was known for being very fair, being a fair judge. She talked to him in private, and when he learned what was going on, he set her free. And this was also, ironically, a year before, it was in 1857, a year before the Dred Scott case, which changed the federal law, so that might have affected her too. But she was a midwife, and she delivered. She delivered whites and blacks, and probably people who were brown. And she became well known in the community. She saved her money. She never married. She saved her money, bought a lot of property. She took the last name Mason. It is thought, no one knows for sure, from a Mormon guide that they had. But as I say, she became very wealthy, and by the time she died in the 1890s, her estate at the time was $300,000, which in 1893 was a lot of money. See, women in California could own law. And that was one place where it didn't matter what color you were. You could still purchase property. But not very many women in California did own property then. You know, it was still a very male community. The first place that she settled on was what is now Spring Street in Los Angeles, between 3rd and 4th Streets. And the city, about 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, turned that into a pocket park between Spring Street and Broadway, and they called it Biddy Mason's Place. When they dedicated the park, Biddy Mason's Place, one of the elected officials, who was black also, I believe, he said, Biddy Mason said, "I ain't gonna take it no more," or words to that effect. And he said, "She set me free," indicating that, you know, what she did was a very courageous act. Didn't mean that things went on to be wonderful for blacks in California, but she certainly set the mark. I've always been interested in California history. My ancestors came here in 1851, just right after the gold rush. And it was while I was doing some research for information about pioneer women in California. And it was, I can't think of the name of the book at the moment, but it was a collection. And I know there probably one other black woman in it, but she was in this particular book. And it wasn't very much, it was just, you know, a couple of paragraphs, but I was just fascinated with her. I thought, gosh, what courage to do what she did. Unfortunately, she couldn't read or write, so everything about her is really secondhand. She never wrote anything, or that I know of, so it would have been nice to have heard her thoughts. So we can only assume from what others who knew her have said. I think she's an example, especially for children, especially for girls, that there's always a way out, but it takes being willing to trust somebody else to help you too. Can't do it all by yourself.